Welcome into another edition of Webchat with the Mayor. Adam Nip here with Woodstock Mayor Pat Sobeski today. And the big news, Pat, of course, that Woodstock is in some discussions with Hydro One about selling our hometown utility, Woodstock Hydro. And have you had much reaction at all to that announcement over the last few days?
Well, of course, it was announced over the long weekend, so I imagine there's activity, but I've had some emails, but also other emails from mayors and the LDCs too. So it's causing a stir amongst the LDC industry, which of course happened in the fall when a report came out from the province indicating that there was the province's belief that the number of LDCs should be consolidated down from 75 down to approximately 10. So certainly the industry's been talking, and the status quo for the distribution of electricity in Ontario, it has to change.
Well, we're in a wait-and-see mode, I guess, for now until the city receives an offer from Hydro One. Wanted to ask you what the process is once that offer comes in. Does that become public? You know, can we have some discussion, a public meeting at that point as to whether or not the citizens want to sell their utility?
Well, the process, and I'll just relate to the Norfolk Hydro sale. Once the council decides to, through the negotiation process, if they elect to sell the utility, then it goes to the Ontario Energy Board for the public hearings. The utility companies, they're private companies under the Ontario Business Act. So, for example, you will not find minutes of the Woodstock Hydro Board anywhere because it's a private corporation. And so the details of all these negotiations, they're all confidential. If the city of Woodstock was to say no to a sale, then all that information goes back to Hydro One, remains confidential. But in Norfolk right now, after the sale was announced, they're going through public hearings now before the Ontario Municipal Board. Those public hearings will probably last, because they're the first one going through, it's anticipated that you have a 4 to 6 month process. And so that's likely the same sort of thing that a sale to between Woodstock and Hydro One would go through that same regulatory process. So it's going to be probably 4 or 5 months before an offer finally comes to the city. And then if the city was to accept it, then you've got another 4 or 5 months of Energy Board hearings to take place. So that's kind of the rough process.
So there is a chance then for the public to have their say on the issue?
Well, certainly we're encouraging people to come forward. People are asking questions. Well, what about, because there's the main three things that come to top of mind. What about the employee security? What's going to happen to employees? We take great pride in rates, even though the rates are set by the Ontario Energy Board. What is a Hydro One going to do to make sure our rates remain competitive in the area? And then you've got service reliability. What are you going to do? It's one thing in our initial discussions to say, yes, we can do service reliability, but okay, now you got to tell us exactly how you're going to do it. By the same token, they want to go through the books of Woodstock Hydro to make sure there's things are in order and that there's no surprises from their end. So both parties are doing due diligence, but I've had, so I'm encouraged people that have sent me the emails, I've replied back, put it in writing, because it'll form part of the negotiations that'll take place. And so if people are concerned about rates and that, we'll make sure those questions come forward.
Very good. I wanted to ask you about horse racing today, because on Friday there was a $400 million purse that came out from the province to support horse racing in rural Ontario, and Woodstock was not mentioned at all in that release, and we didn't really get a response from WinRAC. So I wanted to ask you, you keep up to date with everything going on in the horse racing industry. Do you think Woodstock will ever see horse racing again?
That's an easy bet. The answer is no. The horse industry last spring, when the province changed the rules on the proceeds from slot revenues, it was certainly devastating. Many in the industry thought there'd be a phase-in program, so I guess this is a quasi-phase-in program. But back then, last year, it was thought that the small tracks, Woodbine and Mohawk, which are run by the former Jockey Club, but small tracks like Western Fair in London, Clinton, Hanover, and Grand Valley or not Grand Valley. It was called Grand Valley, the one that's in the Elora Fergus area. Okay. Those would be the 6, and then they've added to that Flamborough Downs and Georgia Downs. So the racing industry is congested now in southern Ontario. There's different levels of tracks. And so for tracks such as Sarnia, which has a major facility, for Ottawa, for Sudbury, there's some crumbs left on the table for them to take a look at to see if they can make it viable. But without those purse subsidies, it's pretty difficult for the industry to survive.
And in Woodstock, we had pretty low attendance at the races.
Yeah, at Woodstock, they could have run the races at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and had the same 25 fans of racing show up. So they were handing out purses of between $30,000 and $40,000 a night because of the subsidies from the slots, but the betting handle was often less than $10,000. So it was certainly was not a viable industry.